Good morning and good evening to everyone.
Oh, yeah.
So now we're going to begin. So I'd like to Okay, so first of all, I'd just like to say Tashdale, greetings to everyone who's joined us here this evening, morning, evening. All these people in my small screen here.
So
it's just like in some of the prayers and sutras, it says that in one particle of matter, all the existing particles can exist. So it's like the whole world can fit just in this one little screen here.
The bronchial jumps Jesus or remit to be to some the enrollment be sent your pocha changing chinze or the la cochas. Nilo toba jever shingi lobs. All of the Talarian, I'm quite a young Bisimbiatam, Sanji, Kwamba Rumbo, Chini Chang. Tobaraja, the Chedo, Tambi, choose someone the Nis and the Turkian, the Yamsa Lamber Jagunyambi. Samba Shank the Tokeba Samo set up the sensors. Tatira Kang, Sambaneta, Tiring around to Ladder Young, Tiningasuma. Oh, the Tingre. Oh, Tingrip Jazak. That train, you should save your panny, Tiniam to Shuguyins.
So once again, listen to these teachings with the intention that you will listen to them, listen to these profound teachings, and then put them into practice in order that you will be able to free all beings as limitless as space, all mother sentient beings as limitless as space, and bring them to the state of Buddhahood. And so with that intention, please listen to the teachings on today's teaching, which is continuing with our teaching from yesterday of the 100 verses of Padmapa Sangye to the people of Dingri. And so today I'll be continuing from verse number 24. Let's.
Kanglan Norio Tela Senam Jong, Jimba Chume Tongshi, Tingrawa, Kangla Wangyo Tela Digba Yo, Keda Wangdo Pongshi, Tingrawa, Keda Norman Jela Deva Me Sorcha, Tangla Tramshi, Tingrawa, any Lasotati, any Tatama, Ta Kangla, any. Noria Patelas, any young, any Senama Yores or Beneta, Casatola, Choshire to Yomara, Case Yoba Yena, say young, go by the chair, Mountain Droya Mato, Tine, young ticket, Semju that Yomare. Oh, that did not yin, didn't tongue as a pen any. Oh, that nor yoba to sotam young any 다 노르트서 탐지기 옌펜 드롭 되니 짐바 초메도 땅 세라와다 페네 그래서 기타는 다음에 에니 망고직 다지 옌펜 드롭이야 에니 때나 옌게 다지 에니 그래서 되게 망고직도 다이 다다다 나라서 잠블랭게 또예 블라소고 되네 대수고 쳐도니 야컵 대소다 되니 게바 추고 대소다 에네 대소고 되는 망보고다 에네 로솜 망보 땅 데라서 바다 제도 와다 대소다 짐바 초메라고 지도 되네 차난도 데라고 쟁에도 나서 투제 지쇼고도 에네 대나기 땅 알아서 배 에네 다때 미나 때네 나란저 애니 가세 이어봤듯이 그치 애니 다고라 접게 대대바이나 때네 타마 가서 깔이 집부터 제야마도 가야 용면도 왔다 때나기 강나 왕 이어봤대라 애니 다야 대과여서 내가 애니 강나 때네 때네 노르마와 때라양 때네 가서 대와 요 말에서도 왔다 tinde songang ta ngaran che pena khashila ta wang mejo teso ke nor mejo teso ta nga chola nor te me samchin ke donga chado wang mejo teso la ya wang cha me bige ene ta donga je wang yoba teso la dewa chimbo chi yore samgo wa samgo yore yang Tena nika yojo jorwa ta pena ke trakwa sta pena normal wang yaba ene ta ngaran tsugu pe ene sinzin da wore ta ene chamra yiche noryang yo wang yang yo keda yo na ko dewa cheshu de cha gorwa ina yang ta kon kage cheki no bang do wa la so tene Tende sonza ene tate tamje dorna tene ngaran toga ene ta teso tamje tsama ta ngaran to ene dewa sengete ya dewa chila me deba je tongde do ta dewa sengete ya zo tene ngaran to ene ta rang semni tsar matopa ina ta nga zo pena ene karsa pobran yanme kang rawo chegi nana tene doyo tam che tam de yabayina semla tene chi ngaran zu tape dewa meba ene nyoda chenbo tene ngaran zu yu de mejo ta ngaran zu chupo tam che la pat pe debayina nga zu hakko de res.
Those who get wealthy get miserly too. People of Dingri give generously without being partial. Whoever gets power acts sinfully too. People of Dingri abandon all desire for rank and power. Those with rank and riches are never happy and at ease. People of Dingri, get ready to claw at your chest in anguish. So, as it said here, whoever has wealth, to them, they're going to have miserliness, covetousness to that. They're not going to have contentment about their wealth. As much as they have, they're just going to want more and more and more. And so they're never just happy with what they have. They're never just content with what they have. They're never fulfilled. And so those who have wealth, if you can use that wealth in order to help others, if you can, you should use that wealth to help others. As it says here, you should give generously without being partial. Like, for example, these days, many wealthy people are doing a lot of work in order to help with the situation of the coronavirus. A lot of countries, as countries themselves, as well as a lot of rich individuals, are spending quite a lot of their wealth in order to try to help in some way about this coronavirus pandemic. And so, that's a type of giving generously without partiality. It's somehow helpful for everyone. And so we should really be thankful to those people, to those countries and those individuals who are using their wealth in such ways. And so, but then also, people without any wealth, they also have it difficult. And then people who do have their wealth, if they just sit around holding on to that wealth and not using it for anything good, then they're just working hard really with not much benefit. It's not really useful to work so hard. And so then it says those who have power, it says act sinfully. So they will get into, they will engage in negative actions because of that power. And so, people who have power, people who have wealth, they're not really that happy. Most of us, we think that, if I had power and I had wealth, that would be like the happiest. That would be a really happy place. But it's not necessarily the case. And then there are people who don't have that power and who don't have that wealth and feel unhappy, or they have suffering because they don't have that, because they wish for that and they don't have it. But, our normal way of thinking is that, once you have it, then you're going to be really happy. Once you get that happiness, or once you get that power, or once you get that wealth, then you're going to, have that. And so then it says, those with rank and riches are never happy and at ease. But that's what we think. We think once you have wealth and power, you're going to be happy. But think about like the American president, Trump. We would think that he should be, the most happy person in the world. He's got the power, he's got the wealth, but he's got the biggest problems, really. It's all falling upon him right now, right? He's got the biggest problems. And so, if you can, if you want happiness, you have to find that happiness from within your mind. And that's the most important thing. Because if you're not able to find happiness within your mind, then even if you're in a magnificent, limitless palace, then you can be sitting around, in a state of, poverty or suffering. And so then, just because you're wealthy or powerful does not ensure that you'll be wealthy. And that's why that happiness needs to be sought from within. Les?
Lasata any countries yang tinga so any ta nga so chimigi yola sta nyama chera ngara ton robo wa ta rovi ke nyimo tela any ta norkatse yo changda any norkatse yo chang teni ti nyimo teni koso kholroya mindowa khapkuba je kholroya yo mare Dona tini tiki nyumo eni ta norki lasachia mindo eni wangyo hiesaya mindo eni ta karese kabde jesaya yo mare ta ti kapsu tini ta ngaran zupe ledang eni ta ngaran zuma semni deya kat je eni chipo tini tome Any rogueba, that the capsuta chingas of Panto, that Toyasana and data lot as a tambi. Chumato Tinita gave out the big panita young around Jitra young the hore. That the cause of Panton and the Gavare. Any nurturing at the Dipare. There tentani Gavate, Tata running around to drop Chetuto, Madame Teduya, Yerjimidoa, Tinit. Yerje yo mare, teneya, palananje yo mare, teneya, tedu kapsu, ta guna ya chitsarwa, tene sonza, tene ti yema lam dima chamar chor, ta chimi yole nyepi yuwa yisirwa, lote chule choshi tinglawa, yema lam dima chama chor se. Ene yang yen shegi nando yema lam la tamjur mtse se singe treje dos. Dona truta tata chuchi tingwa se tata rande ramon yebe kapsos ene gava drop mege pang ene chimigi jakche deso tata rang so rang ta madro pa yina ene jema tene yang kale khapo chagre so pe ta yang 당에 마음바 지금서 하나 치다 되는 남용 참에 비 도좀 찾을 지시 되는 와서 얘네 다 두스체 되죠 다 다다랑아 되니 지금 배저제소.
So in the next world, there are neither family nor friends. People of Tingri, place your confidence in the Dharma. If you wander in distraction, you'll waste the freedoms and advantages of human life. People of Tingri, make a resolute decision now. While you're busy being distracted, the demon of death will catch you. People of Tingri, practice from this very moment onwards. And so at some point, we're going to have to die. We're going to have to move on to that next world. And whenever we do move on to that world, then there's, however much wealth we have amassed in that lifetime, we can't take any of it with us. However much power we have at that time, there's no one who we can express that power to, or no one we can hold that power over. There's no one who we can challenge or face with that power. There's no wealth that we can take with us. Our body and mind will become separated, and we have to go alone without any friends or helpers into that death, leaving our body. And so at that point, the only thing that will help us, the thing that we should be placing our minds in or placing our trust in, is into the Holy Dharma. And so it is our virtues and non-virtues, our virtues and vices, that will carry on with us and determine our future existence. And so we need to place our attention to the Dharma now to prepare for that. And so what the things that will help us are those virtues. The things that will harm us are those non-virtues. And so now, while we have the opportunity, then we need to accomplish as much virtue as possible and abandon as much non-virtue as possible, because at the time of death, there's no one from whom we could borrow more virtue. There's no one we can take a loan from. We even if we need more of something, we can't get it. There's nothing for us to do. And so now, while we have the power, while we have the freedoms and advantages, then we need to work. We need to accomplish those virtues and practice those dharmas to prepare for the time of death. And so later, there won't be any chance for us to do it. So if we're thinking that I'm going to, practice later, like it says here, wandering the distraction, you'll waste those things. If you're busy with distraction, the demon of death will catch you. So if we keep thinking, I'll practice later, I'll practice in the future, then the demon of death will catch up with us. And that means that we will die unexpectedly. The death will come without any certainty as to when it will come. And so we have to practice now with diligence. Let's learn. Rela sumchubade.
다 기다드는 남용 참에 본 고통 트레드지 등러와 시위 나버 수점만 랑고 통이 등러와 쳐버렸으나 지정 거밤에 예라 잠버지시 등러와 노게 줍소 니만 노게 줍소 지긴던 집다 현재 모두 추소를 더 라워지시 등러와 매도 가솔레 경 추소감 르란 로데메도 등러와 아니 선비트서 하얀 르단데 시베트는 늦죠 마빈지 규밀룬들로 등러와 총든 롬보 총진 낭바르지 조제 보랑에서 등러와 규미 토요를 지정 예능에 비 땜들 다다르게 등러와 다 뜻소 탐지 또 상마 당하란지 다 남치 참해봐 얘네 다 치위께는 예밤에 봤더니 다 다당가 좀 다봐 뒤에 나네 다 다당가라 속에 얘네 치와 이게 얘네 마다비 꼴을 다 기탐제더니 들으시는 얘네 송거요레스.
When will the demon of death appear? There's no easy way to tell. People of Dingri, right now, be always on your guard. The day you die, there's no one who will protect you. People of Dingri, be ready to have yourselves alone to count on. If you reflect on death, there's nothing you will need. People of Dingri, always keep your death in mind. Like lengthening shadows as the sun sinks low, the demon of death relentlessly draws nearer. People of Dingri, quickly get away from him. The morning's ravishing flower will wither by nightfall. People of Dingri, don't put your hopes in your body. Even if resembling while alive the children of the gods, once dead, they are more frightful than a demon horde. People of Dingri, you've been deceived by these illusory bodies. Visitors to a market day, their trading finished, on the morrow have dispersed. People of Dingri, your friends will part from you, be certain. Since the scarecrow conjured up by magic is sure to tumble down, people of Dingri, act now according to the linking of effect with cause. And so what all of these are discussing are how death is uncertain. The conditions of our death are uncertain. And all of this is discussing impermanence. And within the contemplations of impermanence, specifically talking about the impermanence of our death and the impermanence of the time of our death. Let's.
So da 기당게 치완 남용을 차요 말이 송로와. 기당게 치완 남용을 차요 말이라. 라 그래도 되니 띵상라. 다 가르세 거고. 얘니 다 ngar chong manyo batende ke ta neda nacha de soge ini ta khadu nede khadu poyo ani so shendo khadu shendo yo ta dewi chang ngeba mindo as tete tene ta ngaran zo pena ani ya ta chitang ge sego yore ba ini nga pena ta ngada lo chung chung yin ngada tata shiga mare rawo samna lo chung chung de so chi ani 되게 댕라고 지치게 되고 요래. 야 나다 내매 삼바. 다 아니 도스케잖아요. 다다 시고 말에 삼바라고지. 라소더니 다 대자고지 삼고 요래때 다 더더 아니 다 카시 빼도 저서 아니 가서 찌마 타고 그때 아마 뭐 싫어고 요래. 어때네 때나 영화서 아니 로 충청 충청들이야 때네 마고 싫어고요. 배나 등상게 때네 때라 기타게 때네 라서더니 다 지단게 이니 당하는 저 등상게 나사도 속에다 로 충화돼서 더니 당다 내매도 서 장도 서도 왔대 이네 대야 레면도 왔다 가사칼에 지 랍제도 가서 가시더니 뉴년들이 로 충격들이 돼서 뭐 싫어도 와 너르드나 이네 당아서 애니 가드시 애니 가발라시 간레지시 이네 다당아서 시에트웨지 이네 수치를 다 딩서도 요 말에 나처럼 은시에 요 말에 야나 나처럼 중화라 라마 토비요 말에 대때 되네 대외 다다다 나라 저거 빼는 집이 값을 다 담비기 추제도 마도다 게딩이게 다 팬다 너 대마도 옛날 용어면도 대때 되네 다다 니도 되네 개와테 다랑게 아니 강 dumrup 제제네 아니 제한테 개체 무시라렌도스.
And so what's being discussed here is how when death will come, the time the death will come is uncertain. And so particularly these days, there are so many, unprecedented illnesses in the world, so many illnesses that have never happened in the world before. And so we have no idea, who will be, who will get that illness, when they'll get the illness, who will die from that illness, when they'll get that illness, and so forth. We really don't know, do we? And so lots of people, they just have this kind of sense of confidence. Oh, I'm young, it won't hurt me, I'll be fine. I won't die, it'll be fine. Other people think, oh, I'm healthy, I don't have any other illness, so I'll be fine. And so they place their hopes in that, or they have some confidence about that. And so, but if we really think about it, there are a lot of, people who are born right after die right after they're born. There are a lot of people who die, when they're quite young. And these days, we even thought with the coronavirus in the beginning, lots of people were saying, oh, young people won't really be affected. They'll just get better. But a lot of them are dying now, aren't they? And so we have no certainty about any of that. We have no idea when we'll die. We have no idea where we'll die or why we will die. And so we have absolutely no certainty about any of that. And we, because we have not attained any control or any power over the process of birth and death, then we have to place our hopes in the holy Dharma. When it comes to the time of death, that's the only thing we can rely upon is our virtues and non-virtues that we've accumulated. So the benefits of the virtues and the harms of the non-virtues are what is going to affect our future. And so now, while we have the opportunity, it's very, very important that we immediately make efforts at developing those virtuous practices of this holy Dharma. That's our
Oh yes. Any now Daya any Deta any lots of nam shilling young any that little lute toil draw chechene any gel road chetan any same day that jago draw chino progress hola any that country young tenichi little same nide any nam shik any drudge yimba that they got to thank it sarva ini ta nidos ini ta ngaran to ji rang sem dela ini ramang to pa shi che ni ini nyam so la ya te o ta ngaran to pe chi mo re so yi kare re ini jumi linde ji jang jer nge bi demre ta ta de he re de ko
Rela.
다다 드시 들어와 샘제 샤고 지점 폴미 나무 다다 쳐지 들어와서.
And so, since the scarecrow conjured by magic is sure to tumble down, people of Thingri, act now according to the linking of effect with cause. For sure, the vulture of your mind will one day fly away. People of Thingri, now is the time to soar up to the heights. And so, our body, which is like a scarecrow, is certain to, to crumble down, and our mind is certain to fly up like a bird. And so that what that means is that our body and mind will become separated at the time of our death. And so that is for certain, right? We are certain of that. And so now we need to attain that mastery of our mind. We need to attain that freedom or that power over our mind and our practice. And that's the important thing. Listen.
Hola, so ta ti ngaran so ini le ta le debo yinde. Ini ta ngaran so ini certa ta ngaran so ta tamjur. Tarwa je jorwa je se ta ngaran tris song jorwa ta tamjur jobje da tembe melodi. Ini ngaso kaise mo shiu chere. Ta dige toni ini ta 대저 약고지 땅 톰나 이니 다당아랑 저 이니 세직 르직게 아니 산제지 고방 투야지 고갑대 다 다대들 이니 이야버래 근데 손자들 다 대다고 걸르대 아리 찾기 녀바대요 근데 가랑 저 대저 약고지 땅제니 근데 답에 이니 랑당 yen simjen tam jela ta jinga zo ene pemba jil drop ane la guardo en rangi ni ga to drop tong ge te da chebar je de zo bejo tang je de ne ngara zo cho sa drba jang ene te na yin ge da tare ge lutela da rang la mahli ba je da rang la machar ji 다 시ren가 되나 만져 빠지 줘야 돼. 이제 대신 뭐래 송와레스.
And so now we have this, comfortable position in our bodies. We have this body, which is the precious human birth, the precious human body with its 18 freedoms and advantages, the 8 freedoms and the 10 advantages. And so that's extremely important that we have that. And if we're able to use that body properly, then we have an opportunity now with this precious human body to be able to attain the state of Buddhahood in just this very lifetime, within this very body. And so having attained this body this one time, if we're able to put that into practice, then able to use that well, then we should use that in order to bring benefit both to ourselves and others, to all living beings. And particularly with this body, which is the support for being able to help ourselves and others, then we should use that in order to gather the accumulations, purify our obscurations. And then, so we shouldn't deceive ourselves. We shouldn't be mistaken, and we should accomplish this such that we are able to die without regrets. And that's important, to reach the moment of death without regretting your life, or without regrets. Listen.
Oh, yeah. Ni ta tining aranzo any ridog semke trinke pamala shamta ninje gompi tingrawas ta aranzo so ta any tipa chembok ini ta chutamje tsawa dawote ta tambo ni chi any jamba ta ninje sing kachembol ta tela semje devala devata dembala samje cheni hani devata numderva dobi shambache ani ya semje dongarje te solo me cheni ani dongarta chandola ani ninge sego nona tene ngato ta chambata ninge sengende ta 장첩제 sem gomyala tene mena tab mebre 너네다 말한 속에 상제제 공방제 로고에나 상제의 juk 가르레 셀라보도와 맞아 상제제 공방로에 주대 가르레 아니 주대다 아니 장첩지 생래서 다 장첩지 생 주대 가르레세나 네네 샴바타 닝게고 닝게레서 와 샴바타 닝게 그래서 다 샴다 닌제 검사데 다 소레세나 데네 리로기 심제도 차고도와 데네서나 조제라데네 리로기 심제도 담지 제르가라 쪽에 에네 가든 첨보이 바마세 무스드네 가라 쪽다 에네 다 니컵라 나초페나 파마 이게 다 가서 가정시야바나 이게 마시 트레인 아니 파마지 샴조게네 가든 첨보이 바마세 타도 상첩 로버 제발라 앞에는 리로그 심비에서 담징아서 까진 쳔버려도 와.
And so then all the beings of the six realms have cared for you as parents. People of Dingri, towards them, cultivate your love and compassion. And so in the Mahayana, then, the real root of that Mahayana Dharma comes down to love and compassion. And so that love is that wish for beings to be endowed with happiness, for beings to have happiness and not be separated from that. And then compassion is to wish for them to be freed from suffering. So observing beings suffering and wishing them to be freed from that suffering. And so that's love and compassion. And to practice this path of the Bodhisattva, to generate bodhicitta, then these are indispensable qualities. And so if we want to attain the state of Buddhahood, then what is the cause for that attainment? And so the cause for that is bodhicitta. And what is the cause of bodhicitta? That is love and compassion. And so those beings to whom we can develop, or for whom we can develop love and compassion, are all of the beings of the six realms. So just as I was, so from one perspective, as I was talking about yesterday, when we talk about, the sentient beings, how we have this debt of gratitude to them. From one side, we have a debt of gratitude for them because in the more immediate sense, or more kind of worldly sense, then they have all been our parents, like we were talking about before. So we have to recognize them as being our mothers, remember their kindness, and wish to repay their kindness, and so forth. And then from another side, also, we owe them this debt of gratitude because ultimately speaking, in order for us to attain the state of Buddhahood, then also these sentient beings are extremely important as an object of our practice. Thus.
That's right. Da yang ini da 장첩지 셈 되기 때문에 가서 다 곰사게 열라고때 대차고요. 다 아니 너나 열때 다 심지에 담지 너나 당아도 장접수 용어때 예배를 예배지 어느 때는 열때 ini tape rime pa choda riso ma chepe dona teni simpian tham chela mai go yo ba de te pena ta churi chenje teni chenga so ani jamba ta churi chenje ninge la so pa ta lo te so tamje ini jamba re de go ninge re de go pena ta te tamje ini ngara so ya sang 창벌니 봐서 다 그래서 창립이에 맨날 대답이 창변이비에 다 창빈이gel로 빼는 땅 하나 줘 아니 두시 다 빼는 강자 찍을 곰이 잡아야 빼는 땅 아주 조리jen스나 나랑게 조라고 파만라고 다 대답을 잠바던 hingi 제바이나 대야 패도 말어 배 팬도 침보요래 배 차이나 되니 나랑 저 문장람이 샬롬을 들려줘라 아마 부모님들 최 콜로도 값서 아니 부모게 아마라 아니 다 잠바 가서 닝게 제제니 다 나랑 신어야 체매 다 아마도 마셔로 제는서는 아마라 삼었다 아메게 다 나다 신었다 로침보인 다 나랑 신어 다 부모들 때는 지 마셔로 제는서는 코로니 지기 지를 도스 제는더니 삼로 땅 인도더니 천노는 니가 신도데 되니 야 아니 가르쳐 거고 라요라 제송부 따버려 두스제네 다 대답을 대답함 제스 아니 다 아니 기타가 샴바다 닝게 아니 다 요 직대 요라다 요 아니 조리제 따오지라 bomba이나 패도 요래 잠바된 기승인데 설레잖아요 이나야 다 문이 장첩지 샘 곰베그 요르데 심지어 탐지를 메고 요래 대때다 토마니는 아주 재미 비어서도 값어야 악용 재미 생각도 용도와 다 곰디가 값어 되니 요르때라 조림해 봐 너나 때니 심지어 탐지라 네 드라 년 파르마 너나 다 대탐지라 이해하면 봐 너나 심지어 탐지 산지적 공방 건도죠 로치 다 고고요 다 대답하게 얘네 심지어 탐지라 요 심지어 탐지라 미과 대양 다 니가 그게 동하랬다 니가 그게 되는 거라는 좀마 메데와 사바좀 많이 봐 타도가 얘네 심지어 탐지 때도 내가 조비 산지지 공방 롬보치지 토바시 제고도 삼바데 다 장점이 심지 되니 뭐라고 되게 요레스
And so these are then therefore the kind of objects of our meditation of bodhicitta. And so that is, all sentient beings. And so the essence of bodhicitta is an altruistic attitude. And that altruistic attitude towards all beings should be unbiased. It shouldn't be bound by, any kind of restrictions or boundaries. It should, and so it should be, in reference to or it should have that aspiration for all sentient beings. It should be focused upon all sentient beings. But biased love and biased compassion and so forth, they are still love and compassion, and they're still beneficial and they're still good. When we talk about the four immeasurable thoughts or the four boundless thoughts, if those are not boundless, but they're still those four thoughts of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, then they're called the four Brahma abodes, and they're still beneficial and they're still good practices. And so, for example, in the words of my perfect teacher, there's the story of the daughter and the mother who are carried away in the water, and the mother wants to save the daughter, but the daughter wants to save the mother, and the mother says, "Oh, it doesn't matter if I die, if I can save the mother," and the mother says, "It doesn't matter if I die, I'm old, so I want to save my daughter." They both end up dying and taking rebirth into the heavenly realms. So that's like a type of an example of a biased love or biased compassion that still like brought them into this heavenly realm. And so those, even biased attitudes of love and compassion and so forth are still beneficial attitudes. They're still good. But when we're talking about bodhicitta, then it should be an unbiased love and unbiased compassion and so forth. So, when we're practicing the four boundless qualities, then we often start with the boundless equanimity, which is one which sees all beings with an attitude of equanimity, whether they were our friends, enemies, neutral beings, and so forth. We see them with no distinction between them. And so we need to generate this attitude of bodhicitta for all of those beings equally. And so that wish of bodhicitta then is the wish to take all of those beings who are the object of our meditation and not merely to clear away or alleviate their immediate discomforts and sufferings and so forth, but to even ultimately bring them to the state of eternal or a stable piece of the state of precious Buddhahood. And so that wish is the wish of bodhicitta. Less.
다 너나 되니 다 장점지 셈대요 되니 럼발이도 다 맞지 원고 다 장점지 셈제라 빼나 아니 저보다 본접 장점지 셈다 담담 장점지 셈 넘버 니요 봐 뭐도 좀 순도 왜 원아서 다 아니 군접 장점지 셈지 되니 다 랍자데 가르고 요르스나 되니 랍자데 다 저거 셈매버리겠어 아니 잠바 셈에 인게 셈에 가바 셈에 아는 셈에서 아니 다 말한 저거 롭중 남비게 토니 냠네 제바이나 다 당보 되니 요르테야 당뇽니 네 셈매봐 너나 다 잠바다 인게 곰스 요르테 아니 셈게 탐지라 아니 효림매바시 어다도 스제제
And so, in brief, then, bodhicitta, when we're talking about bodhicitta and engaging in bodhicitta in stages or gradually, then we talk about primarily these two factors of conventional bodhicitta and then ultimate bodhicitta. And so the trainings in conventional bodhicitta are the trainings of the four boundless attitudes, or the four immeasurables. So those are immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. And when we're actually training in that, when we're training our minds in that, then we begin by generating that boundless equanimity towards those beings who will be the objects of our practice of boundless love and boundless compassion, so that we can develop that boundless love and compassion to all living beings without any bias. Thus.
다 any 대나이 되네다 any 양 다 육바 상접지 셈세다 간다 육바 상접지 셈자 법자라 다 쪼되네 람 하루도 침바 족과 라고요레 다 되게 나네 되네야 하루도 침바 족은 나네 장 되네다 미세게 아니 저바생이 같이 무시라래 되고요 다 장접지 셈지 따가 가달로 롱한테 아니 다 시당들에 되고 되네 다 뒤인데 빼나시 닌게 첨보 대당 시당 첨보니데 근데 다 고니 빼도 매주로 이제 다 냠는 님 더바르도 대대 되네 다당 레지 코르비 천왕나 시당 독산 방식 들어와서.
And so then within that conventional bodhicitta, we have an aspect of conventional bodhicitta, which is called the engaged bodhicitta. And so the trainings for that engaged bodhicitta are the trainings in the six perfections. And particularly amongst those trainings in the six perfections, the practice of patience is extremely important, patient forbearance, because the real contradictory or, the direct contradictory factor to that bodhicitta, to that compassion bodhicitta is anger. And so then, that factor of patience is the forbearance. It's the undisturbed mind that doesn't get angry. So compassion and anger are like water and fire. They can't abide in the same space. And so then the text reads, hate for enemies is samsara's hallucination caused by actions. People of Dingri, transmute your hatred and your hostile mind. Bless.
And the chagli javijang shedangali kichimachi any dikmachigres. Dorna teneta ngaranzoga any da Kana, then also any Shadangji may be metera, that in around Zaba Mevere, and it telata, Jankib the same Jag Tabio Marwa. There is on that around any Zaba, not to penetrate over Tatanga Chamba, Ningi, Gavatanum, Tachitan, Macarse. Ore Jimba Sutam Zobat Sundry, some dancing Yorba. 다 되게 나네 장한테는 아주 다 미세게 다 장교스 변종도 소가 나네더니 저비 레어데 미세게 개심 보시라 난 거요래. 대때다 되게 미세게 요때 다 쪼되네. 당가란 드라이도 걸마. 도나테니 가란 쪼가 다디게 드라테서 담질라야. 얘네 삼로 야고 제 땅바이나 코조 가르치는 가서라 드라치는 차급이 좀 생기요래. 아니 다 세라부 뭐만니 나쪽에 애니 양 직계나 얘네 파만라고 직계나 되네 가란 쪽 된레겠다 가딩 첨보 젠제라 정례 온제 제야박다 또게 다리겠다 벤데께서 드라침보다 차고 차대요 봐 된레제 손상 애니 배차기나 되는 당하란주 아니 대라양 나무거든요. 즉 주트 제지 매버지용만. 근데 손자 대때 미설게다 그래서 담게 아니 당위게 드라트서 담게야 메스 까르니 다트서 담게 세럽 헌지 되네. 파마당 양나랑게다 세와 치슈 제지게 되는지 이마 아니 드레스 제네 사모 당제 제네 미설게 되네 당아주 drala ini dangsempang ini nyala machapa drala madangba ini tetamje ini tangyomje ini semje tamje ta shangjumje semji yord mekje oda tusje.
And so Padmapa Sangye said that, one moment of anger is even more harmful than 100 moments of attachment. And so a person who has anger in their mind, then they have no patient forbearance. And a person who has anger in their mind has no way to really develop bodhicitta. And so for us, that practice of patience is extremely important. And so when we're talking about these 6 perfections, the perfections of generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom, then particularly we take particularly important the practice of patience and of the teachings of Shantideva in the way of the Bodhisattva. Then the chapter of the chapter of patience is especially important for us. And so when we are angry, then the object of our anger is someone that we don't like. They're our enemies. And so we should really think carefully about that. Like, why did they become our enemies? Why do we, why is that the case? And so we should think that, it's possible, maybe that in our past life, they were one of our parents, or they were some other being who is especially kind to us, or especially, someone who we were especially close to. But that through some kind of bad reaction to, or, mistaken kind of response to their kindness, then in this lifetime, then they have, been born as our enemy. And so we should really especially think about them, and really especially try to think of them as being, or as having been in our past life, someone very precious to us, like our parents or some other person who was extremely, loving or caring for us, and especially focus upon them so that we can, develop that mind of equality or equanimity, where we no longer see our enemies with anger. We no longer see our friends and family with desire or attachment. And so that we can have this real mind of equality, this unbiased attitude of bodhicitta towards all living beings.
Oh, yeah. ini tayang sam-sam nga zu shangchop thobala ini ta nga zu ini drat so yang ka rin chimbo isar da sanji shakya thoba ge tene khong labjing de pe khong la ta ka rin chehu de yin song do ini dun labjing train la te shakya thoba sanji song sa labjing ka rin la tene labjing ge lo do kyang kyang che shakya thoba te la zoba gon ini labjing ka rin la tene shakya thoba tene ya Sangye sondoa ene tingsangada tene jagarge sangye ge namtar yago jitene de tabdoa ata de tings de ta pa ka so injila joyo rate
injila yoje marela
ya marwe
de ike chiyo re segdo
아, 네네. 근데 상계게 남탈 때서 때니 제나 제나 빼야고도다. 채나서 자막에 상계게 되니 남탈 때 되니 로니에 따로지 않다 등산 때니 치료를 줘야매. 되니 나 TV랑 때 되니 축바 잡사 되니 제 가르쳐 거로. 얘네 노래 인제 짱짱 때 되는 아주 샘때 마대와지 초도도와 될 때는 양 TV 따야 되나요? 아니 다 니마를 양 티게 TV 겐다 따야 그 쇼르진 상기게 되는 제남제 레오레레레 콜 레오 망보도와 어때 때는 빼야고도 나양 가자 때때 봐 그때때스 때는 참아 때베인 빼야고 섭도다 돼.
And so, sometimes, in our practice or for the attainment of Buddhahood, then our enemies can be, especially important, especially helpful for us. And so, like the Buddha said many times that, his cousin Devadatta was always causing problems for him, always, having, reacting poorly to him or treating him badly and so forth. And the Buddha even said that, that his attainment of Buddhahood is due to the kindness of Devadatta. And so these days in India, they made a really long TV series, like many, many chapters, TV series of the whole life of the Buddha. And so you can see that whole story of Devadatta and the Buddha and that. And so, but anyway, it's really, really good. And Rinpoche was saying that maybe you should watch that. It has English subtitles, that you should watch it. And that, these days we can't go outside and everyone's watching a bunch of TV anyway. And if you're just sitting around watching all of this like disturbing TV of people fighting and arguing, then that's not going to make you feel good or make you feel comfortable. So maybe you can take a little bit of your TV time and maybe watch a chapter or, one episode of the Buddha's life here and there. And so Rinpoche said that he watched, this story of the Buddha's lifetime, and it's really, really well made and really well acted. It was originally in Hindi, I think so. Yeah. It's on Netflix. Oh, it's on Netflix. People here just told me it's on Netflix. Oh.
Dini ta yang karisati baba te so ina ta ngara to te sa ke amdu ke khambe ke nika dus.
And so for the Tibetans out there, this has been translated, into Central Tibetan, Kham dialect, and also Amdo dialect.
Hala sa ta yang aranze tene ta tandam changchup ji sem sengende ta sobo eni ta terwa eni ta changchup ji sem je ta eni tandam changchup ji sem ta jula che goya te ta nga sobo ta shirap tang tene pongbani ta sobo tere de kyor ta tingumi jula chewar chebala eni yang nga so tandam changchup ji sem te jula chewar chebala ta garchen chishu dawo te kare chago resena digdap te chago yore rin jingmele wagya tere songore tandam lenchi kepe yeshe de chozo dripa takpi laje tang boden lami chingla khonale tabien mongba yenba shebar cha ta tandam chanju je semte chewar chebala kare chego resena garchen digdap jango gore tunjiela tsoni sagore ene lakpardo ene tandam changjum je semte gombe optang ene te drave tene ta ngaran zogo pena lamek ene chingla jule jokwala tene nga sugu jule che gogre mato tene de yang ngaran zogo pena ene chik pecha drawo chik butte ba drawo dang ta te de chik tene ngaran zogo chik chwa dawo che tanga sakpa dawo da tendege yongo yo mare terte ta tandam shangju je sem jula jeber ge eni ta tangbo garchen digdap jama jila ta digdap tela mango yorwa digdap singe tela mango chol terte ta tela le nga yisom je tikwa jish terte ta nga zo eni ya digdap jaya ge tapchik kare sena chachar ko be luch digdap da jikten chawa pungshe tingraba jo debjo chamdong na ge dekwa ta tamar longtam malap tingraba mögo dongwe yege dekwa ta lama chur korhe tingraba asa.
And so then the other side of bodhicitta is what we call ultimate bodhicitta. And so then what that refers to then primarily is this aspect of wisdom and emptiness. So in order to develop that in our mind streams, then the main obstacle to that, or the main contrary factor to that, is our negative actions, our misdeeds, and our obscurations. And so Jigme Lingpa, Rigzen Jigme Lingpa, he said that in order to in order to develop the co-emergent timeless awareness, then you have to gather the accumulations, purify your obscurations. That's it. And so then in order to develop Momba, so in order to develop the co-emergent timeless awareness, then you must follow after this practice of purifying your obscurations, gathering the accumulations, and receiving the blessings of a realized Lama. And so any other method you should know to be ignorant. And so then what we have to do then is we have to eliminate those obstructing factors, which are our misdeeds and our obscurations. So we need to purify those things. Then we need to gather all those conducive factors, which is the two accumulations. So we need to gather the accumulations. And then in addition to that, we need to practice meditation, and we need to receive, in our mind streams, we need to receive the transmission of the blessings of our Lama. And so that is the way that we can develop this ultimate bodhicitta. And otherwise, just sitting around reading texts or just sitting around reciting rituals and counting off numbers of mantras and so forth, merely that alone is not going to do it. And so we have so many kinds of misdeeds and obscurations within us. And so we have misdeeds and obscurations of body, speech, and mind. And so then some methods are given here in the text as we come for purifying the obscurations of body, speech, and so forth. So it says then with verse 41, prostration and circumambulation purify obscurations of the body. People of Tingri, abandon your worldly physical work. Recitation and taking refuge purify obscurations of speech. People of Tingri, abandon all your ordinary conversation. Fervent devotion purifies habitual tendencies of the mind. People of Tingri, meditate on the teacher above your head. Lasarabsh.
So tene songzang ta nga zo luji dikwa se ta kanda tene luji dikwa se de ta karere pena ngaran zo ene sojo ba kuma ko wa ene tena yin ene ta doba lobar yamba tena yin ta nga ge zun chama tso tene yege napsen no sen lokala sopate dikwa wa da tele tene nga zo ta te ta bo ge tene ya go somje tene nga zo eni dikwa tege ya ta go na ya luji gewa te tene nga ran zo ta tele dope ene ta nga zo karasa yenje so joba jimba tonwa ene ta te na yege ta domba neba ene te na yege ta nga ga changor joba ene komba domba ene te na yege ta yege chi ene go ne ta chi chamba ene ninge la so kwam do na ta to che chen te ne ta so ta mge ba tam ki pang ene go som je gewa to so tam ta ene druya ta chang chob ji sem gyul che ba ta taphi ene medum ron wa che res.
And so then our misdeeds of body are killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. Of speech, we have lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and so forth. in our mind, we have harmful intent, covetousness, wrong view. And so then we have all of these misdeeds of our three gates, or our three avenues of being. And so in order to purify those, we need to work with their contraries. We need to develop the virtues in terms of, protecting life, giving generously, remaining within our discipline, speaking honestly, resolving differences between people, bringing people together, developing those attitudes in your mind of love, compassion, and so forth. So primarily what we're trying to do is to abandon the negative actions and then accomplish all of those virtues with our body, speech, and mind. And that is an indispensable method for developing bodhicitta within your mind stream. Listen.
아주 다다빠도 감성이 코알 가르치는 네버 다 아주 조 다다 마릭박 제는 때제니 되는 아주마 아니 트러블 참 코발 참 되는 트러블 코도 코르소 다 마릭박 때레 도고나 되는 가란저 야 아니 시럽고도와 되는 아주 투섬 원섬 제고요 투섬 원섬 제고요나 되는 다야 대답을 제사라 되는 기비신이 고고요 올라서 근데 sonda 근데 당아서 양 기비신이 담바테 당아서 개침보지래도와 근데 sonda 근데 라마 쭈르 소리 있을다 대대 당아랑 저거 빼나 애니 기비신이 담바테 애니 당아서 상급지 람라 칭행이 빼나 람 롬보 람주 맹해지 요나 다텔라 람치기 되는지 내신 야고지 랍 송바이나 되네 람라 파르체 메번 로토바나이 되네 양 제냐 담바테야 개침부 차기요레스.
And so then in particular, for us to develop this ultimate bodhicitta, in order for that to develop in our minds, then we need to actually practice. And so why is it that up to now we have been wandering in these three realms of samsara? And so it's because of our ignorance. And so because of our ignorance, we're living in this cycle of delusion. We're turning in this machination or the cycle of delusion. And so if we want to oppose or eliminate that ignorance, then we need to develop the discriminating intelligence or that wisdom. And so what we need then is the wisdoms or the discriminating intelligence, the wisdoms of hearing, contemplation, and meditation. And so if we need that, then we need to seek out the source of that, which is the spiritual teacher. So we need to find our teacher, our master. And so then just like, they're the person who's going to be our guide to lead us on this path to enlightenment. So just like if a person who doesn't know their way around, an area, if they want to get where they want to go, then they need a guide who has a good knowledge of all the aspects of how to get them where they need to go. And if they have that guide, then they can make it to their destination safely. And so therefore, relying upon the spiritual teacher is so important. And that's why it says here, people of Tingri, meditate on the teacher above your head. Listen.
그런데 양에 다다때라 직 시절들 내려서래 다 가장 그때 가서 또다 팀몽게다 택바라우치 토린 로요르와 다마예 다 드랭이데 쪼다 택바 쳔몰라 다다데서 다 쪼 택바 쳔모 애니 디나네 다 미세게 다 장점 지선는 로데 거를 대양 코로나 쳔고여지래 등에 삽제로 오지마 같은 거를 제작을 봐서를 제사야. 그래서 내가 내게 집에 샤다를 봐들 제가 따고를 만든 들어와서도 다 대양 내내 다다 철도 되는 냠는 거 속에 계신 뭐래서 내내 여르제 담바 뉴미 땡여서 내가 포족매도 들어와서 다 내가 되는 아주 가르쳐 거르서나 다 미설게 쌈땡당 And
so then there's one thing that I forgot to mention, is that yesterday we were talking about, what I was calling the common paths of practice, which were our foundational teachings. And now we've moved into the Mahayana practices. So specifically into those practices of bodhicitta. And I think you probably understand that, but yesterday I started off with giving you an outline of the way that this was going to progress. And then I didn't mention where we reached in the outline today. And so now the next verse reads, your flesh and bones took form together, but in the end are sure to separate. People of Tingri, do not believe that you'll live forever. And so this is talking about how important it is for us to begin our practice immediately, to do it now, here and now. And so then the next verse reads on, capture that most sublime of countries, the constant land of the natural state, people of Tingri, where there is no transition or change. And so this is particularly an encouragement for us to develop those qualities of meditative concentration and samadhi. Listen.
Norte tamba semnik perchen chang dela zeba medo tingwa senta kanda da changchup je sem sengdi da zo tingaran zu da semrwa sem ene sem dela ene ngaran zo be da ngaran zo ene zo da ene changchup je sem ze da yempen ge sem chi oda 네 데니페 당가람 저거 사 치슈도치 당가람 자와 탐제제나니 얘네 당가츠 샘 상보데 가시모레 다 장급지 샘승인데 샘 상보제레 데라양 얘네 베다 얘네 샘제 타당 세메바 다부지를 매과 인상 얘네 되게 다지 소남당 평양대양 세메바지 여버레 다 ngaranzu semte 다 ngazu 아니 랑 semte 랑 드니 줄고요래 다 줄버 제발라 드니 세제 담바 띵진 롬 좁죠 집에 동하르메도 등러와 드니 다 semte라 롬바겐도 가레스 줄고서나 드니 다베 아니 삼데스 다 삼데지 바로 좀 마세 다 띵인데서는 삼데스는 지바래 대대 드니 semte 다 띵인쟁이라 any
and so when we're talking about bodhicitta, we're talking about a mind. And so that mind of bodhicitta is the mind of altruism, the mind of wishing to benefit others. And that is the most precious of minds. And amongst all things that one could do, the most important or the most wholesome thing that one could do is to develop that mind. And so that mind of bodhicitta, that altruistic mind of bodhicitta, is a boundless mind. And it's boundless because the objects that it's focused upon, all beings, are boundless, are limitless. And also the benefits and the merits of developing that mind are boundless or limitless. And so this is something that you need to, work your mind into, or develop your mind into that mind of bodhicitta, transform your mind or correct your mind, bring your mind into that state. And so now then enjoy that most sublime of riches, the treasure of the nature of mind, people of Tingri, which can never be depleted. Savor that most sublime of foods, the exquisite taste of meditation, people of Tingri, which abolishes the pangs of hunger. And so then this is in order to savor that most sublime foods, the exquisite taste of meditation, then we need to develop that meditative concentration, the perfection of concentration, which is synonymous with saying samadhi or meditative concentration. So we need to train in that or develop that. Listen.
냠래나 마 결용도 값서 이래 등상가란 쪽에 다 가르쳐 샤마타 그봐 얘네 신해다 너는 샘 신해다 라동스 다샘 되니 다 돈남 장주 샘도 다 싫었지 근데 다 가서 바로 듣지 말라 보러와 싫어 바로 듣지 말라 다 너도 가리로 보고 요랬으나 다 당봉가란 쪽에 샘디마 얘네 다 빙인생 제기발라 하고 아니 신의 랍도 dembe 라통게 되니 녀무 다는 말 되니 정벌 제그레 송기는 장주스 비전주노라 송여와스
Mhm. And so then when we're talking about that perfection of concentration or samadhi, when we're talking about that in terms of or in application to our own practice, that's mainly talking about, first off, the practice of shamatha or calm abiding practice. And so, but when we're talking about ultimate bodhicitta, we're talking about the perfection of wisdom, right? But before we can develop that perfection of wisdom, what we need to do is to develop that single pointed meditative concentration of shamatha. And so, as it said in the Bodhicharyavatara, you know that the mind, which the vipassana, which is thoroughly imbued with vipassana, or the vipassana, which is thoroughly imbued with shamatha, will be able to overcome or to destroy all of the afflictive mental states. And so first we need to develop that quality of calm abiding or shamatha. Let's.
Tene yang komje tamba tembi duzo tongpela gyunche me do tingla ta te yang ngana zoga semde shinela labgo batang machepe tene tela temba tang shijinji go ne tene chinga zo yang ne yang de tene nyamsla goya na chanju su bi jojo na la yang temba tang shijinji tene mise ge le yo wa.
And so then as it says, enjoy the most, imbibe that most sublime of drinks, the ambrosia of mindfulness, people of Tingri, whose flow is never interrupted. And so we need to not only train in that practice of calm abiding or shamatha, but we need to rely upon the qualities of introspection and mindfulness and to again and again maintain that practice. And so even in the Bodhicharyavatara or the way of the Bodhisattva, there's a specific chapter dedicated to these qualities of mindfulness and introspection. Let's.
Yes. Tene ngatu kanda yang tene ngatu sembate any ta yang the sembate ya any zang tango do as. Tene ngatu kadam bag hienyen de so to skin be tene nyamne je de kaps tene ge loji do. Any semba ngaba je treon de do na ko je ya. Yang jamba dan hinje dan yang tidak dapat itu karbo je ya, ini tu sekitar tampu nak yang siapa, ini pasal kini tes sekitar ini karbo dan napu ini tu manyu cikwan, ini tamat ini ngaran so pen karbo mato, ini napu meba caro so, ini sedoa gizi bank, oh dia jauh je ini ngaran so jamba sih sengit ini kaisin boleh do. Tende soda ta December ene ngato ta kandra semba ya gyubo ro ta semba ge gyonde so ton tipa genyon na tang yode de so ya jemang na tang semde jeden de tang semde ba ta ngara so ge jelo de tang semde jenjam so tang semde jebzang de tang to ba ina ta tonda do de do.
And so what we're trying to do then is to make our mind more and more wholesome. And so there's the story of some of these Kadampa Geshes in the past. So when they were practicing, this one Kadampa Geshe, every time he would have a bad thought or a negative thought, he would set aside one black stone. And every time he would have a wholesome thought, a good thought of love, compassion, faith, devotion, and so forth, then he'd put up a white stone. And so when he first started, paying attention and doing this practice, it was like all black stones. And then at a certain point through maintaining that practice, it became a point where it was, an equal number of black and white stones. And then ultimately, like continuing with the practice, it got to the point where he had only white stones and no black stones at all. And so that's why these practices of mindfulness and, introspection are so important. And so we're trying to transform our mind. And when we say like transform or correct, to fix our mind, it means that we're trying to take all of the faulty aspects of our mind and try and make them lesser and lesser. And we're trying to make all of the qualities in our mind greater and greater. We're trying to make our mind more and more stable, more and more relaxed, more and more gentle. And so that's the point. That's what we're trying to do. Lesser.
다 티닝아란 저 조지 담바 용시 초를 대란 넘절매도 등러와 다 나저 시럽지 바로 듣지 마 시에도 와다 시럽지 바로 듣지 마 다 대라 시럽지 바로 듣지 마 세대가 값서 되네 다 나저 저다다 아니 다 라통 담에 또 시럽대 다 대라 나랑 또 빼는다 다 나랑 쪽에 철빛 싸왔대 애니 당생을 통되거든 다 나저 당생게 애니 싸왔죠 버티야발라 디네 다 나저 배 애니 시럽도 땡고 다 대라 퇴비 시럽 삼비 시럽 애니 곰비 시럽 다 때려서는 퇴섬 곰섬 따곰 쪄섬 생인데 다 디지털한테는 다 좀 다 나저 배 애니 퇴섬 곰섬 시럽 땡고 그랬어
Rely upon that most sublime companion, primordial awareness wisdom, people of Tingri, from which you can never be parted. So here we're talking about the perfection of wisdom of the six paramitas. And so primarily this is discussing that aspect of vipassana. And that vipassana is the vipassana or the special insight into or the wisdom that realizes the lack of self or the selflessness. And so the root of our delusion is the grasping at the self. And so if we want to cut through the root of that self-grasping, then we need to generate that wisdom. And we generate that by way of hearing, contemplation, and meditation, and through understanding those presentations of view, meditation, and conduct, but primarily through the practices of, or by developing the wisdoms of hearing, contemplation, and meditation.
That's tining aso seji tambar ripi chechong chor dela chenche medo tingrawa tongbe ngala ripin dong korji tawa toda medo tingrawa sta di zowo tining aso tapa ene tondam changju bisemla dene ta ngalo so pena ta tondam changju bisemla tondam changju bisem dene songo yores.
And so then seek that most sublime of progeny, the young child of pure awareness, people of Tingri, for which there is no birth or death. In the state of emptiness, whirl the spear of pure awareness, people of Tingri. The view is free of being caught by anything at all. In a state without thoughts, without distraction, abandon the watcher, people of Tingri. The meditation is free of any torpor or excitement. So here, once again, we're continuing the discussion about that ultimate bodhicitta.
단 dorna teni chutam jela teni tanga zo eni karese gore eni rangjing la daxing jeje ne eni da dorna teni nga zo eni chutam je ji yoba dang meba dang nika mayimbe teni niki karese nika mayimba la so pandona teni tawiye juba dang jarwa dela ini tangaran so pena ini woman ini awas go yorwa ta tela pena ini tabel uma chembo se ta tamje da charwa ta tela che thota meba tawala thota meba rewa yo me yi mena so pendona tene pripe ta tamje tang charwa te o ta te tinga so tawachi.
And so the antidote to our unawareness or ignorance is the awareness of primordial wisdom or of timeless awareness. And so what that is in brief is the knowledge of the nature of all phenomena. So we get to that by examining the nature of all phenomena and seeing that it is beyond all of the conceptual extremes of existing, non-existing, both existing and non-existing, and neither existing nor non-existing. And so what we call that is the freedom from the extremes, the freedom from the four conceptual extremes. And that is what's referred to as the view of the middle way. And sometimes called the great middle way, which is free from all extremes. And so it is free from any of these conceptual elaborations of beginning, end, of existence, non-existence, being something or not being something else. It's free from all conceptual elaborations of whatsoever. Let's.
재미 땡도 영매 자라 통 고나 친구 매도 땡러와스 어라서 다 디당하란 저거다 애니 당하는 저 배나 애니 라통크 얘네 다 애니 가서 냠내들 와 라통크 냠내 너나 당하서 따와 때나 밤냈더니 다 애니 라통 다음에 또 보이더니 시럽대 다 담고 가서 따와 때나 밤 얘네 고바게 돌다 신고 매비게 돌아서 다 심마 목바 타발라서 봐 너나더니 신고그 쫀다 자리게 고니 얘네 양내 양도 봉고도 산지 샤자 도바양 얘네 가서 냠바를 다양 가르세 냠발 야과 생지 양 냠야래야 인바 생지 도와 변에 당아도 시럽 바로 시럽 님보나 옆방가랑 산지 띵엔들은 옆바를 욕소사 다 너는 다 띵인데 라더니 가서 다 광고를 했어.
They done in a state without thoughts, without distraction, abandon the watcher. In a state without thoughts, without distraction, abandon the watcher. People of Tingri, the meditation is free of any torpor or excitement. And so when we're practicing vipassana, the special insight or superior insight, then our view is the view of that wisdom which realizes selflessness. So first we have to establish that view. And once we have established that view, then we need to put that in practice in meditation without any of these faults, meditative faults, which the general meditative faults are referred to as torpor and excitement. So not feeling sleepy, not feeling mentally agitated, and so forth. And so then we need to meditate again and again in a state that's free from these faults of meditation. And so what's that referred to then is meditative equipoise. And so like it said in the Heart Sutra, that the Buddha then placed himself into or rested into that state of meditative equipoise. And so when we are practicing then this practice of vipassana, then we need to practice in the state of meditative equipoise, which means we need to have the state of meditative concentration or samadhi. Let's.
Oh, yes. 다 내가 저양 다 까마바 랑종도 이어라 아니 랑종도르지 드네 드리송 이교 자반데네 샤자체 타당 저 우마침보 너는 군대 조천 시장자 직시 군동 법에 댕토 표승이 지송요레스
직시
이교의 트라바 다자 전부 타당 저 꼬마 전부 다 대탐지들이 대바데 조바 전부 다 도스진에 다 대탐지들이 직신이 되니 군제 도바 쇼스무 지워레스.
And so the third Karmapa, Rangchen Dorje, he said that the state beyond any kind of mental examination or mental activity is called the Mahamudra. The state beyond any conceptual elaboration or beyond any extreme is the great Madhyamaka. And all of that is the great perfection. And so may we, by knowing one thing, realize everything.
That's the calendar 공부지네. 다양 흉종랑도 가메 잡중지 저바 빵랑메도 등러와 그비 열메 랑샘 랑레 샘난 sol 리버 레도메도 등러와세. 다디나로 조땡아도 저바당 리원이.
And so then in the next verses, it reads, in a state of natural spontaneity, train in being free of holding anything back. People of Tingri, in the action, there's nothing to abandon or adopt. The four bodies, indivisible, are complete in your mind. People of Tingri, the fruit is beyond all hope and doubt. And so these two verses are talking about the conduct and the result. Let's.
그래서 다 쪄봤으니데 다 소보트더니 ngaran 소고다 지톱진념을 자체제네. 얘네 다단디나라 빼나 얘네 흉종하던 감이 썰종지에서 다디 소보트네 다 지톱 얘네 라렌다 파양 들고르와 얘네 다 장집지 샘긴낭 장집 숨비게 되니 지야 되이나 다 가서 대지워와 다 얘네 Jukbak, Beneta, Jukwa Changchub de Sems, Teneta Telape, and that Changchub de Sem, Donna Tenin Yamela, Tenet Rambagan the Check Labuyores, Beneta, Jimba, Sotram, Zoba, Zondula, Supandora, Tesopita, not any that Jobatam Jayang, Teneta so that Tetam Jigapen Changchub Semji. Any 냠내당 랄제지네더니 젬팽이 샤워 줬고 마도트니양 나 가르사 셈바 잠보제 데디어 생에지 애니 대치국을 듣기면도 와 되니까 젬팽이 샤워를 무수기파 좀제 되니 젬라 팽바 드비야 되니 게바 드비야 오다도시.
And so primarily when we're using the word conduct, then we're talking about something that you're doing in your subsequent, what's called subsequent attainment or post-meditative period. So after you're talking about your day-to-day conduct, like outside of your formal meditation practice. But so that needs to be, connected to, we need to maintain that connection with our meditative practice. We need to bring that practice into our post-meditative experience. And so if you are a bodhisattva, then you should be training in terms of your conduct in those aspects of what we call the engaged bodhicitta. And so we need a bodhisattva then trains subsequently or, step by step in these trainings of engaged bodhicitta, starting off with generosity and discipline, patient forbearance, diligence, and so forth. And so all of these modes of conduct are the practices of a bodhisattva. And so it's in connection with those type of activities that a bodhisattva then engages in some kind of altruistic activity, some kind of in terms of their conduct, they're actually doing something helpful. And so it's not said that a bodhisattva should just sit around and develop an altruistic mind and not do anything. It's that you should actually directly engage in some kind of activities in order to help others and accomplish virtue and, work for the benefit of others. Listen.
그래서 드니 말을 드니 파체 드니 직 가르쳐 거라. 다 깔면 배송 이야기 존라우치. 얘네 다 강다 업차도 젠도 담지 직 파체 자체 아니 트무가 잡잖아 버질라 정해라 버지도. 강한데 드니 다마 도르제 특발라 제르야 뭐쇼바지 미도서. 얘네 다 강한들이야 얘네 다 저거다 얘네 다 상나 도르제 특발라 얘네 다 가서 뺀 람파르드 침발에 얘네 가서 에덴 드리버 다 양상아 도르제 특발라 러보고와 드레스제도 다디 멘저데 할람 얘네 다 따위직 도당이라고 저러봤다 되게 다 찾아 침보라고 얘네 다 간다 얘네 조바 침보 가와라 지 되나요 얘네 할람 드레제요 가져 내샤스.
And so now what we're moving into is more connected to, what we were discussing before in terms of that quote from the Karmapa. So talking about these paths of practice of the great middle way, Mahamudra, and the great perfection or Dzogchen. And so these are, kind of common trainings for any of those three paths. And so we're moving into, teachings on Vajrayana. And so I think it would be, safe to say, or it would not be inappropriate to say that the subsequent verses are dealing with Vajrayana. And so in terms of that, then we're talking about our fundamental path of the perfections or the perfection vehicle, and then what we call the resultant vehicle resultant path or resultant vehicle of Vajrayana. And so what's coming here now, I think, it could be explained in connection with either, Mahamudra or Dzogchen equally. That's Rinpoche.
That's what. This on that telema carry resena any Jobala Pangang Mepa Jivala Redo Mepa Sundwa. Ta this on down. Tene Dona Tayang Holy Jitzawa Ripi Semlan Deus. Tene or Karase Holy Jitzawa Tamji Ripi Semlan Deba. Tene Semla Nobo Meadow Setaya in this kid comes that inima that pache so tene lam shaja chimboda tapen those matene jarwayena those.
And so then, as it said here, in the action, there's nothing to abandon or adopt. And then in 54, it says the fruit is beyond all hope and doubt, doesn't it? And so then moving into the next verse, it says the root of samsara nirvana is to be found within your mind. People of Tingri, the mind is free of any reality. So now I think we could say that we can apply this to, or we can talk about this in terms of what we call the path of Mahamudra. Less.
So that Zawa Teninga to that Semlan do Sura, Zawa Sema. That been your time telpa, that day Somayena, your Rangija Madopa, your time gets Semla told the job. Any Tamji Samanato Ranga, then Semjet Nawa, that way your tapin, Semjim Minjava, there is also good chick Nawa Yorba. That day Tamji Nawa Minjava. Carresena, that is also any. Semji. Any Susuka, that date of Susuka Semji Navarama, the Shajo Marva. That date of Gelatin, Surdebaina, date of Susuka Tene, Yola Tepe, your Rangage Marva, Semla Todeba. Semla Tena, then Semla Tene, Mobo Meba. Oh, that's Sem Dene, Rangage Marva.
And so,
then
it's saying that, samsara nirvana, they are rooted in your own mind. And so all of those objects, objects of mind are not inherently existent, but really come down and meet with your mind. And so they are all, appearances of the mind. And those things can all appear differently to different beings because they are appearances of the mind. And so when you look out at objects, if you really seek out the objects, you find that they don't inherently exist, but are just appearances of the mind. But then when you seek out the mind itself, you find out that mind itself also is free of any true reality. And so that's what we call like this path of Mahamudra, this the way this is being discussed.
Ola sadra medo tingrava seta da kandar yang ini ta ni pa ini nangwala teba ina ini nangwa tamke ini chik rangyen jima do pa pena shalam jimes ini koto ini sha nangkal porna ya ini porso ge jeyo marwa tena yin dona tini teso tamke gombe ge kapso ta Gombegi Nyamjemeba. Any that Jivolatini, young Chukunin, Nimin Bondra, all a sudden made of Tatino or Serginated here on the Donatini, Sam J, Inichi, Samla, Sam Mamchite, Sam Jirangin, or Sara or something. Taya, Sam the Jimmy Chamiti Rema Somba. Then Chugo Nimbote, Bennett, Nimagan Nimbotan Dras. In it, they had Talo any pedicures any or sell a Drubio meadow, static on a tag or such Musukatachi or Sir Tapet or Sir Shaja Chimbos and the water or Sir Zoka Chimbos, Taco or Sergin Tangoa.
Desire and hate appear, but like birds in flight should leave no trace behind. People of Tingri in meditation be free of clinging to experiences. The unborn absolute body is like the very heart of the sun. People of Tingri, there is no waxing or waning of its radiant clarity. And so, in brief, what we're talking about here is if you look at those appearances, you see, or those perceptions or individual appearances, you see that they don't truly exist. And that they pass away just like they don't leave any trace, just like birds flying in the sky, how there's no trace left in the sky of the bird's path. And so when we are meditating, then we shouldn't have any grasping at any experience that appears in our meditation. And so and it says that is talking about then this result in terms of this state of luminosity. And so as it said in the quote, the famous quote, that's there is no mind in mind, or mind does not exist in mind. But mind itself is, the nature of mind itself is luminosity. And so mind isn't utterly non-existent, but it has this essence of Dharmakaya. This word absolute, unborn absolute body is the Dharmakaya here. And so it has this, it's not utterly non-existent, but has this essence of Dharmakaya, which is just like the essence of the sun, which is that luminosity is always radiating and does not have any waxing or waning in terms of its radiance. And so then we often use the terms, the luminosity of Mahamudra, or the luminosity of the great perfection. Thus.
다 티니 양 말에 티니 가서 남도 달랑 강동 꾸만다 노라 쇼토 메도 등라와 솔바 지메 최여 로몬다 천능 긴제 메도 등라와 박차 진지 남긴 자린다 차등 현차 의소 메도 등라와 조아 땅바 띵들 니만다 샘라 로테 메도 등라와 Zimmer round kisser longdandra, yola hienze medo, tingrava. Rikpa mime namki jatandra, nyamla toto medo, tingrava se. Ota, tinimata, trukyo. Any resom de palatini, or tinita kutumayang, nyamla shea yes.
And so now I'm going to explain verses 58 through 63 together. So those read, thoughts come and go like a thief in an empty house. People of Tingri, in fact, there's nothing to be gained or lost. Sensations leave no imprints like drawings made on water. People of Tingri, don't perpetuate deluded appearances. Thoughts of attachment and aversion are like rainbows in the sky. People of Tingri, there's nothing in them to be grasped or apprehended. Mind's movements dissolve by themselves like clouds in the sky. People of Tingri, in mind there are no reference points. Without fixation, thoughts are freed by themselves, like the wind of people of Tingri, which never clings to any object. Pure awareness is without fixation, like a rainbow in the sky. People of Tingri, experiences arise quite unimpededly. Less.
다 되는 강하다 다 되니마 쪼대 애니 다다다가 좀 애니 배들이 다 중과 강하다 되는 남도도서 가르스 시기네 고토마 졸로게 송도와 배나 되는 거는 또 남도 배를 기술에 애니 다 달랑 받서 배나 다 남도 랑도 강동지 꾸마단다와 소와지메 최 로모단다와 박차 전쟁 얘네 탐지 다 가서 남긴 자리 땅다와 너나 때니 조아 랑당 띵들 니마단다와 제메 랑도 제서지 롱단다와 어다도 전에 다때 탐지 다 뺏겨서 쪼고다 아니 다 빼당 저저지네 어다도지.
And so what's being talked about here, if we connect this with the path of the great perfection, is what we call the way things are freed, or the way things are liberated. And so talking about that self-liberation or natural liberation. And so, when a thought arises, how is it that it is free, or how is it that it is liberated? And so it's given many examples here in terms of the way that thoughts are freed. And so there's these examples like thoughts come and go like a thief in an empty house. Sensations leave no imprints like drawings made on water. Thoughts of attachment and aversion are like rainbows in the sky. Mind's movement dissolve by themselves like clouds in the sky. They're freed by themselves like the wind, like a rainbow in the sky, and like the dream of a mute and so forth. Thus.
Dini 가서 그거를 다 릭방음에 남기 야단라 냠라 포도메도 딩러와 춘이 좀또 꼭비 만남라 색다 타니에 잘로 딩러와 또비 냠케 연을 대완라 데니 갑데 조도메바 조도메도 딩러와 sartung yarme chinang dawandra kangla thodo me to tingrawa nangdong yarme nangka tongwandra semla tabe me to tingrawa jemba yingme gimu melondra tela chunta me to tingrawa reitong yarme melon zonghendra tela chenga me to tingrawa se tayang dinchiko padma.
That's it. And so then pure awareness is without fixation, like a rainbow in the sky. People of Tingri, experiences arise quite unimpededly. Realization of the absolute nature is like the dream of a mute. People of Tingri, there are no words to express it. Realization is like a youthful maiden's pleasure. People of Tingri, the joy and bliss cannot be described. Clarity and emptiness are like the moon reflecting in water. People of Tingri, there is nothing to be attached to and nothing to impede. Appearances and emptiness, inseparable, are like the empty sky. People of Tingri, the mind is without either center or periphery. The mind with no thought and no distraction is left like the mirror of a beauty. People of Tingri, it is free of any theoretical tenets. Awareness and emptiness inseparable are like the reflections in a mirror. People of Tingri, nothing is born there and nothing ceases. Listen.
다 빼나 애니 꼭꼭 말람단다베스 다 빼나 섬지미 송거와 꼭꼭 말람단다베 사이다 다니메 또비게 이시 아니 존 데와다드라베스 아니 다 가르세 아니 갑디 조드메 돌라테 사통 야르메 촌낭게 다와다르 도베스 강라 착토메소 애니 낭동 낭과단라비 샘란 타베메 애니 다 애니 제동 김문 멜롱단라비 헬라 tum타메스 애니 리동 멜롱 종예단라비 헬라 쟁가메스.
And so then pure awareness pure awareness itself is like a rainbow in the sky. And the realization of the absolute nature is like the dream of a mute. And what's meant by that is that it's it's inexpressible, unthinkable, and unspeakable. The realization is like a youthful maiden's pleasure, just as its bliss and joy can't be described. Clarity and emptiness united are like the moon reflected in water, in that there's nothing to be attached to and nothing to impede. Appearances and emptiness are inseparable like the empty sky, in that the mind is without center or periphery. The mind without thought and distraction is like the mirror of a beauty, in that it is free of any theoretical tenets. Let's.
Dona, tenengaran zoga, nang yendo, ene, tong yendo, nangwa, rewa. Dona tena yeta, dona tene, tata, nang tong, ene, detong, sartong, ene, chantong, dona ta, tetang, jeta, ene, ongbala, tabu meba, ene, tela, zimba meba. Tene tapet chiso, ta tushijen.
And so to summarize then, what's being talked about is just as things appear, so they are empty. And so that's the unity of appearance emptiness, the unity of bliss emptiness, the unity of clarity emptiness, the unity of thought emptiness. And so that emptiness is without any center or periphery and should be without any grasping. Listen.
다양 대동즈메 강란 예셔른다 대랑 원종메도 등라바 초담지메 작차 작차 공반자 작차 하문다 자란 짐바메도 등라바 대도 총코르 뽀왕 공준자 유전 레랍조로 등라바 코르디 라운드 시비 제몬다 셈라 jen가메도 등라바 손 ni 다양 나저 아니 가르세고라 ni 낭윅 다 가르세 다 나말라 랑히제 마도 페나 땅아 조족 탐제 ni 낭동 ni 다트락동 ni 다셈 게 다다가 저 남도그 되니 직대도 별어와 다트서 담지 애니 고마 애니 주젠 템들 애니 직 라레 데바인다 단 도나 트서 탐제 아니 도나다 애니 직 따과 예나 때때 탐제 되니 가서 탐제 되니 랑징제 마도 봐 되니 다 도나 되니 릭공 자공 낭공스네 다 탐제 도나 빼네 아니 뽕이긴도 낭이긴도 뽕바다 되게 적들이 가서다 빼드니 드라미나 뭐도와 너나 되니다 아니 콘디 랑로 시비자몬다 콘디 탐지 아니다 이리파 나무긴 걸라 때나 시비자모던라와 서로 샘라 때나 얘네 다 가서 쟁가도 매 샘라 때네 떼서 매봐 너나 때네 샘라 쟁가 매봐 얘네 대 탐제다 빼는 애니 치능 다 탐제다 쪼고다 고조 셈니 주바다 잡아 대응앙서 애니 다 만들바 매바 인장 애니 천능 주바랑 그 셈는데 차롬 추르시오 등러와 세트네 다 타도 그때 탐지 난 너는 때네 다다 애니 나와 탐지 셈 탐지 때네 랑이제 마로 받봉바 애니 공관이 되네 당을 또 애니 대양다 춘이경 당가서 애니 다 여매지 쪽에 다 탐제다 잘와오다 두스지 되네 다 대다 배는 자기야 친구 다좀 애니 다비기 토래 송구야 그래
Bliss and emptiness are inseparable. Bliss and emptiness inseparable are like the sun lighting up the snows. This is number 70. People of Dingri, there's nothing there to be apprehended. Nothing there to apprehend. Diluted talk will fade without a trace like echoes. People of Dingri, in sound, there's nothing to be grasped. Happiness and suffering through a mechanism like the sound of a lute's body and strings. People of Dingri are produced when actions are combined with necessary conditions. The natural freedom of samsara nirvana is like a children's game. People of Dingri have a mind without any aims. Your notions of the outer world derive from the mind within. People of Dingri, let the solid ice be melted into liquid. And so none of these things that appear have any true existence or are in any way inherently existing. And so all forms are appearance emptiness, all sounds are resounding or sound emptiness. And all of our thoughts are just a interdependent connection of causes and conditions that lead them to arise, and which means that they are emptiness, that everything is emptiness. And then everything has the state of natural emptiness. And so it is not the case that anything is like solid or permanent, but rather it is the case that nothing is inherently existing and nothing is permanent or fixed in any way. And so when we examine these things, from the perspective of their appearances, their conventional appearances, then they're just like a children's game. But then ultimately that mind itself has no particular point of focus. It has no birth and no cessation. It has no concept of inner or outer. It's completely free from any conceptual elaborations. And so that state of emptiness is everything is contained within that state of emptiness, which is the freedom from all conceptual elaborations. And so all appearances then are appearances of the mind, and that mind itself has no inherent existence, but is emptiness. And so that is that emptiness, which is the freedom from all conceptual elaboration. So all of this is being discussed from the perspective of that view of freedom from conceptual elaborations, or what we could call the view of the Mahamudra. That's Rinpoche.
That's Tayang Mari Chungor any Pangla Chidunda, Kalpi Kipamedo, Tingrawa, Kondi Chunang, Kondi Tropa, doesn't Shepherd, that in the one, Kondi Chunang, doesn't Tower. Pachem Kondi Tropa, doesn't chat and draw, Ramda Lama taking the Asare, Chimat. Any Ramda Lama Lago, Tingrawa, Senta. Dorna, ini tanga tu ini ta marikwa tam dorna tini nyom bala sopat so tam ches ini cetanga kagna tini ko raying tini ka tweji yo mare so ina yang ta te tam che pena ta ngaran so ini ngo sheba cheche ini ta te tam che ta pena ini yang ko ranging maybe ngal rangrud drog borewa in this song ini te tamkela ta any la ya pena ta ngaran so any ramda sen ta tenagi ki pache teni kondi chunang dravzun chabra ramda lama la ko tinwa se ta te tamjegi chunang tamje yam matongba chunang ngo shebar chechenes any ta te tamjegi pena chese any yang 다 모히소나 양 천낭도 저담 지고파 애니 제메서 열적으로와 다 대자부치 다대 조대되네 도스치네 송이니 바라스.
And so then here it says that the mechanism of ignorance is like the gush of a meadow spring. People of Tingri, it cannot be halted by obstructing it. The delusions of samsara nirvana are like coming face to face with an enemy. People of Tingri, as your ally, practice virtue. And so there's a little bit of variation in the Tibetan text here, but generally what's being said here is that your ignorance and all of your afflictive mental states and emotions, they are not something that you can just stop. They're not something that you can just block or cut off. But rather, you should try to recognize their nature. And it is through recognizing their nature that they can be left to their natural freedom, or can be left to their state of natural liberation. And so then, and so it's that all of these, machinations of ignorance, of ignorance and its subsequent, afflictions and afflictive emotions and so forth, that you can't just stop them, that they're going to keep on coming like this stream. But that one can recognize them, and if one recognizes the true nature of them, then they will dissipate without any trace. That's Rinpoche.
Konga rangsar selling darwanda te ya hosre kukano le bat konga rangsar selling darwanda redo palon mabje tinrawa sitni ta driba tini ta ngara jogpta ti ta konga tini rangsar selling darwanda redo palon mabje tinrawa stati zo tini driba sheche ta ti ko pala tini zo ta ta chaja chimbo. The
natural clarity of the five kayas, the five aspects of enlightenment, is like the expanse of a continent of gold. People of Tingri, there's no hope or doubt, attachment or aversion. And so here we've been talking about the actual practice of meditation, but now we're talking about the resultant state when it's here talking about these five kayas or five Buddha bodies, which are self-evident or self-luminous to one's experience. And so this is, been talking about here the ground, path, and fruition states of Mahamudra. Listen. And so then
다 담저 주면도 추즈 마당스 특히 소주 특히 추저리 예빈 나온다 저야 녀버가고 들어봐 챈도 또고 제대로 시장 치 너도 출을 돌시 들어봐 여베트서 여베트서 까톱 냐면지 얘는 용에 맞춘 들어봐 다 도나더네 담저 주면도 졸라 마당 얘네 다 특바 침북 얘네 다 아니 추저 대자우치 얘네 다 마음바 니가 말해 얘네 손다 다 되게 되네 배 냠내는 베스 얘네 다 세대가 또 가리나 적적으로 했더니 더더운 게 다치 휴야고 제스 미서가 로충종 돼서 얘네 연이고 값서 얘네 냠내지 마톱나더니 개고 차드 얘네 zupoge 냠내 mathopa tene nege nar tene tena yinga kange chimbo chagara tene sonde lochong kapso tene pe chula tonang jis.
With its freedoms and advantages, so what's left here are just some more general types of advice. And so from 78, it says, with its freedoms and advantages, human life is like a treasure island. People of Dingri do not come back empty-handed. Do not come back empty-handed failure. Do not come back an empty-handed failure. The practice of the great vehicle is like a wish-fulfilling gem. People of Dingri, however hard you search, it'll be difficult to find again. For this life, come what may, you'll have enough to eat and clothe yourself. People of Dingri, put everything you have into practicing the Dharma. While you're young, practice hard and with austerities. People of Dingri, once you're old, your constitution won't withstand it. So what's being said here then is don't let this precious opportunity go to waste right now when you have this precious human rebirth with its freedoms and advantages. And then this practice or this meeting with this practice of the great vehicle is like a wish-fulfilling gem that will be, you found it now and you may not find it again in the future. And then particularly for those people who, and then, things in life, just the general things you need to live in life, food and clothing and so forth, that'll work itself out. And instead of focusing on that, you should focus on your Dharma practice. And then particularly for the young people, it says that while you're young, you should work hard and practice austerely, because once you're old, your body's not going to be able to do it. You're going to be held down by illness and everything's going to become much more difficult. So while you're young, you should put your efforts into the Dharma practice and pay attention to the Dharma. Lesser.
나서 다양 녀무께서 녀보라 버티 테마라서 졸로 등러와 값수 콜비 동을 잼버지 대비 순더비노 등러와 다리 쫀도 젤라 랑사송 셴이 가르제메도 등러와 다리 무콘 콤드 남셔요 뒤지 사마제인 등러와 첼 롬에 짜기 서반다 레로 뇽리 뽕히 등러와 다른 데니 동난 레저나 물을 치네 까오 등러와 생이다 양 디닝하는 쪽에는 아니 좀다 가르송 거잖아 아니 녀모 레본도 값어 아니 녀모터서 챈버지스 아니 다양 값값서 코빅 동화 챈버지 아니 값양 가서 아니 양 값값서 야더니 손더블렘 너나 되니 존르제스 다다 랑가 라발이어도 값서 존르제 다다디 되니 말한 좀 담줄 줄을 되니 제 톱들 되니 마콤바이나 되니 주마되니 대자고 그 라가 말레스 다 다리데 되니 pen 뒤야게 사마렌진라고 인테 아니 체테라 아니 onze matans Lome matans. Tare teni peti keserita eni mülüt töme sona eni donan de sona teni yang jedo teni ngazu eni chiso mülütende top ale kabores. So that is what I'm keeping labza. That's what teni chuya pochi nyamna ya pochi. Deyang chidul maya dadarang teni nyamna chis. Oni tate zo pajetene lochong de solo pajetene
And so then, when emotions arise, bring antidotes. When emotions when emotions arise, bring antidotes to bear on them. People of Tingri, let free all concepts in their very nature. Think from time to time of all the defects of samsara. People of Tingri, that will make your faith become much clearer. Right now, develop the diligence and stand your ground. People of Tingri, when you die, it will guide you on the path. If you're not free now, when will you ever get free? People of Tingri, your chance to eat only comes one time in 100. Life is so ephemeral, like dew on the grass. People of Tingri, don't yield to laziness and indifference. From where you are now, should you lose your footing, people of Tingri, it'll be hard to find a human life again. So all of these are just general advices on, encouraging us to practice the Dharma. And so it's saying that, when the afflictions arise, that you should remember the antidotes and remember to apply those antidotes. And that, sometimes you apply those antidotes. Sometimes you should, you should make supplications, and that, and so you should remember those defects of samsara and so forth. And so now, when you have this opportunity, and when you have these practices, and when you have this, this precious human rebirth with its freedoms and advantages, if you don't have time to do practice now, when you have this opportunity, when are you ever going to find the time? And so it said, the example is like that, if you only get to eat like 1 in 100 times, right now you've got your opportunity to eat, and you should eat. So you shouldn't allow this precious opportunity to go to waste. You shouldn't allow this opportunity to become meaningless. And so if it becomes meaningless, it's going to be very difficult for us to ever find such a precious experience or precious opportunity ever again. And so these are, primarily pieces of advice, which maybe are mainly directed towards, the young people out there. Listen.
Bangbo, Samla Sorhi, Tingrava, Dick Tropo Punshi, Tingrava, and Trozang Tena Yante Shogum Jong, gave a Hinya Tenshi, Tingrava, and Yojun, Yojun Rang, Yang, look, Bangbo Samla Chorshi, Tingrava, Marik Tropi Pungi Zaba Yin, Xie Tramba Songshi, Tingrava. Donga to some yoni, Niembo told the day. Donga to some yona, Lamtani, Niembo told the day, Tingravas, all as a tatini, oh, Matayang, that's over Tinea, Labjati, Donata, Cadebo. Oh, that Mele. John the Mill Carset Cadebo Milishi Masheche Rang Ranat John the Ranat de so that any that Mixer getting around to Troll Zambola dance, strong about my dance, they are talking about a tenant and jobbing about show gore. Then it Troll Zambola dance. Yojugi Yamala. That's our Tatangaran to pen Rang John Mursong Rava. Turbi Pungre said that Marik, but it didn't Trubatam Jig Savadore. Then Junda Chamba the Shiving any toilet day. Any day na yenge, that any Nyom what the song. That Lewundu Gabsotini, Niambo, Leba Chichen. Then a mam Borjomchi. Dorna tene that Zondria put Jeshos.
The Buddhist teaching is like the sun shining through the clouds. People of Tingri, now is the one time that is present. You say such clever things to people, but don't apply them to yourself. People of Tingri, the faults within you are the ones to be exposed. The faith that faith succumbs to circumstance is only a short step away. People of Tingri, contemplate samsara's imperfections. Frequenting evil friends is bound to make your own behavior evil. People of Tingri, abandon any friendships that are negative. Frequenting virtuous friends is bound to make your own good qualities arise. People of Tingri, follow your spiritual teachers. Deception and lies deceive not only others, but deceive yourself as well. People of Dingri, as witness, take your own conscience. Delusion born from ignorance is the worst disaster-bearing demon. People of Dingri, hold fast to your vigilance and mindfulness. If you don't hold on to the 3 or 5 poisons, the path is near. People of Dingri, generate powerful antidotes against them. And so what's being said here is more advice, which in brief comes down to don't just say a bunch of clever things and don't point out, faults of others, but look at your own faults. And particularly then, we also should avoid, interacting with negative friends, because if we spend time with them, then that negativity, that bad behavior and so forth is going to rub off on us. But we should rather spend our time with virtuous friends, with spiritual teachers and spiritual friends and so forth. And so we shouldn't deceive others. We shouldn't deceive ourselves and others, but primarily we should be looking at our own faults. And so as it said again, that the delusion is born from ignorance. So ignorance itself is the root of our delusion and the root of our afflictions. And when those arise, then we need to hold fast to our vigilance and mindfulness. And we need to rely upon those qualities of vigilance and mindfulness. And so with that vigilance and mindfulness, when those afflictions arise, then we should be able to remember, we should be able to be mindful of and remember the antidotes to those and immediately bear those down upon and eliminate those afflictive mental states. So then, and so in brief, it's saying that we should use all of these things and train as such and, really put our efforts into these practices. Less.
Last, then that's into the chungwe. Sangmeja, Gocha Laberti, Tingrava, Bakcha Yun, Royun Ringwe, Chinde, on Deba Jejok Mabje, Jeju, and Deba Jeju and Gera. Mabje Tingrava, Samla, Kodo, Chona, Soa Top, Boba Shola Chayon, Tingrava. Chimar. Kibara dona dosemche Sangye tsana dao tingrava. Ola so ta ndor denas any zunru mena any tadanga to Saint Jagmanes any nyamne zunru ches ta ngaran so ko pakya so yun rengo sonta yang de lebgerwa. Then the solar was of Pachat on a jet majes. Young Samla J. What the Shagamendona, Soa tops. Any ata, door dunas, tachi, any chima, any Dongar Mendona, any Deva Dogo Yona, then it tatare, then it turned drums, then a Sangye Ranga dos, Sangye Chiras Rana dos. Sang Aje Majidi, Charanzo Res. And Sugatinic in the Yamle Jepson Zamna, they sang Jet or man, that Ludora, those res, then Azara, that many Dogmares, Charanzo Tata, Semla Rondo, Jona Yagres, that Tamaterdo, and Nagichan, Nami Mapa, the Dubachabai, Che Nam Jam, Teneta. Nagi Jesus Shuba Namjang, De Nagi Nang Sho, Seota Teresha, Tamari.
If your perseverance has no strength, you will not reach Buddhahood. People of Tingri, make sure you don that armor. Habitual tendencies, being old acquaintances, keep coming back. People of Tingri, don't go on following the past. If your understanding and realization are weak, pray to your Lord Teacher, people of Tingri, and deep meditation will be born in you. If you aspire to happiness in the future, accept your present trials. People of Tingri, then Buddhahood is right here, just beside you. And so I'm saying in brief, if you don't have that diligence, then you won't become Buddhahood. You won't become Buddha, you won't attain Buddhahood. And so therefore you should make efforts at that practice. And so because you've had these habitual tendencies for such a long time, then they keep on coming up. But if you keep on maintaining the continuity of that habitual pattern, of those mental imprints and those habitual patterns, then you're going to be in trouble. So you should try to stop that continuity and not continue in those past habits. And if your practice is weak, if your understanding and realization are weak, then you should supplicate to your guru. And so in the future, if you wish for happiness and you don't want suffering, then you need to make efforts. And so if you make those efforts, then he's saying Buddhahood is within you. As it said here, Buddhahood is right here with you. So you have Buddhahood within you, but whether you actually can manifest that, whether you can actually, attain that for yourself or make that real for yourself or not, is really up to your own diligence. So if you can apply yourself diligently, then you will attain that. If you can't, then you'll be left aside. And so then he says at the end, this old Indian master will not stay in Tingri, he will go away. People of Tingri, it's now that you must clarify your doubts. So he said, me, the old master, I won't be here for much longer. So if you have any doubts, make sure you get through them right now. And then he says, I've practiced without distraction. People of Tingri, you should follow this example. So he said, just as I have made these efforts, you should also do that as well. That's it.
라스다 강답더니 비아당 찍도스 다양 디노는 카시를 찍디노는 옛날들이 카시 찍더니 티바들 카시 요사래 강답다 디노는 마 아니 다 때래 드니 다조 다 다른가 sob자테 아니 다 토보 마보 아니 다 가서 술이나지 고지 여바 수기나 팬토바도 드니 디나나 다 찍처럼 냠솔에 지난주 드롭트야 가세 여바데 되니 야보다 아니 냠네지 삼로땅 에네 소소게 살마 에네 고르지지 드레체 쇼스 되네 바체다 저 창로도
Laoya. And so that is 101 verses here, pieces of advice here, and there are some extra ones here as well in our text. But anyway, primarily, these pieces of advice are meaningful and beneficial both to people at higher and lower levels of practice, and so they're very meaningful, very meaningful and very helpful. And so you should, whatever pieces of these practice you feel able to do, those ones that you can put into practice, then do them. Put them into practice. Think about them and apply them to your mind. Lesson.
라서 되니 다 다르게 되니 말한주 니만 닉 나라 되니 다 다양하게 말한주 냠도 체제 되니 냠도 다파 양 깨져야 돼 고급 종이 가보종 되니 다 지난주야 얘니 다다다 나주 망보지라 다 제삼발 강내 요래 얘네 망고민에다 참말 열어봐 강에 열에 샘제 열에 다 연아양 다 말아 졸라지 탑시 매봐 얘네 다마 진짜스지는 나관에 토홍만다고 지래 얘네 다 대접지 대대 다 참하게 샘발라 얘네 지마 그때 스코도 다 간다 대다고 동하나 강에 홍도 값을 얘네 소수 샘바때 대보제 톱, 거의 양보제 톱, 현어제 톱나, 이네 띠랑게, 강에게 콜보 마용야다, 얘네 르그 초대나야 팽그래, 냠내나야 팽그래, 다 제나제 가서 패도 여러 개 많아서 직제거라 패도는 요 말와, 제장가 때네 대외장 때네 지난주 장이 삼로 도시제 땅 때네 삼삼한테 지스 냠내, 시라게 냠내 땅. 얘네 때나기 장첩지 샘지 냠는 데서 양의 제바이나 다 돼서 다 다다게 값 바발라 다 매야 휴레 얘네 다 대라고 가르쳐 그러고 현달의 녀야 로고 말아 얘네 양 말아야 막어제 얘네 양 샘지 매바도서 카바 땅네 양 드리서 막보 제거나야 배샤도서 간가 조르도 얘네 랑게 샘지 매바데 랑게 제 얘네 샘데서 마 집어 땅에 유로나 얘네 다 트랭케자 테랑 인스.
And so now for these 2 days that we could all meet and that we could have this discussion, I'm very happy to have had this opportunity. And so I know that all of us are having a lot of difficulties, a lot of problems, mental problems. But it's not that we don't have anything we can do about it. So we all, when these kind of difficulties or sufferings are coming up in our mind, then if we can bring ourselves some comfort, if we can make our minds more open, if we can bring our minds to a state of, calm, relaxation, then we don't have to carry that burden of that anguish or that suffering. And it's really good for our minds. It's really healthy for our bodies. It's going to be helpful for us to be able to, continue in our practices and so forth. And so, if something's helpful, then we should do it. And just sitting around feeling bad isn't helpful. So we shouldn't do it. We should apply ourselves in these practices. And so sometimes we should, apply ourselves in the practices of meditation, in the trainings of bodhicitta, and so forth. And so this is really the best medicine for us right now. And so otherwise, we don't, it's not something that we have to go to buy somewhere else. And if we, rely upon someone else and try and call some other doctor to try and fix us, then we'll spend all of our money on some kind of teleconference kind of thing. But otherwise, if you can, treat yourself with your own medicine, then that's the best thing. So I think, I wish you all, to be able to do that and to be able to, keep your happiness and so forth. So that's it.
Lasso, any okay, good night.
Good night.
Salam ji.